See, I would never talk about Sweden that way. That's just me, but you do you, you know? There was obviously a lot of question as to what he was going to do. It's one of the wide open free agency periods. Is he going to sign with the Celtics? Is he going to go back to, where he grew up in DC? Is he going to sign with an organization like the Spurs? Obviously played his college basketball in Austin at UT, Hook'em. Or is he going to come back to the Thunder, a team that just had a great run and unfortunately blew a 3-1 lead in the Western Conference Finals? I tend to just personally, I always gravitate towards, they're always going to come back. The status quo is going to win out. Clearly, this is a formula that works for Kevin Durant and the Thunder. Surely he will be there. And it didn't go so great. I mean, it went great for Kevin Durant in the long run. It didn't go great for me. The Warriors lose in the NBA Finals, and reportedly, Draymond calls Kevin Durant from the parking lot after the loss. They had just bounced KD out in the previous round saying, look, you're our guy. You're the piece that's going to complete this team after our historic implosion in the NBA Finals when they had every opportunity to win. And I have to say, Draymond Green, of all people to be making that call, after the suspension that he brought upon himself by ceaselessly kicking people in the nuts repeatedly over the course of those playoffs, for him to be in that position to say to anyone, you were the missing piece is a very rich piece of NBA history. Well, there was already this anticipation of the way that the salary cap might jump. And for the hardcore cap nerds, for the people working in the league, there was a lot of speculation as far as what would that actually mean? What would that actually allow teams like the Warriors to do? And so the wheels had been spinning on, Harrison Barnes is going to be like potentially a spot you could improve upon. Who could you get there? The Kevin Durant thread had kind of already been tied as far as like, this is a possibility, but it seemed so like Twitter photoshopping a Warriors jersey onto Kevin Durant level conspiracy theory that I didn't even clock it as a realistic option. I just thought, maybe Harrison Barnes is out, and clearly a guy shoots as poorly as he did in those finals. That's a spot you might be able to improve upon. But never in my wildest dreams would I have thought Kevin Durant would be that guy. It was much more like, maybe you get a couple of really good role players in that spot. Maybe you have Harrison Barnes back, but you also get another guy who could take over for him when his shooting goes off or something like that. I got an invite for like a cabin getaway. The people out there who aren't in this world, they don't know that July 4th is sacred free agency time. It's off the calendar, not a time I can partake in any sort of social activity. I get this invite to hang out with my friends on July 4th to go to a cabin. I take them up on it. As soon as we get in the car to drive and go to the cabin, I get a vicious migraine. And I'm thinking like, this is a sign from the universe that I should not be doing this. But I get in the car, I go, Kevin Durant makes his decision, and I end up having to slam out like a reaction blog to Kevin Durant signing using like a phone tethered hotspot in a car on a laptop, as everyone around you is enjoying themselves and having a good time. It's a tough scene. It's a tough scene for yours truly, but we soldier through. This is what we do. Look, I've been doing this for a long time, long enough to know the period from the end of June 29th or so, until July at least 10th. Don't make any plans. Don't do anything, because it will blow up. Gordon Hayward will make his free agent decision in the middle of your July 4th barbecue. I promise you he will. I, as an NBA writer, engaged in an act of extraordinary hubris when Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors, which is I said, you know what? It's feeling a little quiet right now. I'm going to get away to a cabin in the woods with some friends for the weekend. And he's not going to sign during this period. It's going to be totally fine. I was very wrong. I tried to do a little long weekend getaway at the start of NBA free agency. I should have known better. It didn't go great.
And the Rookie of the Year, an Olympic gold medalist, a 4-time scoring champion, a 7-time All-Star, an MVP of the league, Kevin Durant.
My immediate reaction is, does this really have to be now? Can we please? Can you give me 24 hours to enjoy my vacation? Can you give me just a minute of time? My second reaction is like my basketball brain is blowing up, right? Like, what does this even mean? And that's where you get caught in the runaway train of, oh my God, the Steph and Durant pick and roll. Oh my God, 3 of the best shooters in NBA history flying around each other. Oh my God, Draymond and KD defensively, what can they do? The Warriors is the premier small ball team of their generation. Durant had just come off a successful stretch, showing that he can be a premier shot blocker at the 4, showing that he could have some chops as a small ball 5. And so quickly, my vacation frustrations melt away. And I'm just like, oh, this is an incredible thing that I'm going to get to witness and be a part of and see up close. That's an opportunity you don't want to take lightly. That's an opportunity that, whatever people may have felt as far as the existential sense of what does this mean for the league? What does it mean that a star like Kevin Durant would sign with the team that would beat him? I don't really care about that stuff so much, to be honest with you. I just want to see great basketball. And it was clear immediately, this is a recipe for great basketball. This isn't one of these, we're going to throw a bunch of random superstars together and we're going to see if they work. It was, this is a formula that works. This is one of the great individual talents we've ever seen. And a team that can ceaselessly incorporate that. That's an exciting possibility, even as you're trying to take a vacation for yourself.
But in the end, what it comes down to is that Kevin Durant is one of the top 3 players in the world, and he ran away from the challenge that he faces in order to jump on the bandwagon of a team that's a little bit better, that's already rife with at least one superstar, a couple of guys that can really, really get it done. I just view it as him jumping on the bandwagon, and I think it's the weakest move I've ever seen by a superstar, plain and simple.
I will see it as the moment the Kevin Durant conversation changed forever in a way that could never be undone. Whatever happens with the Suns, whatever he does for the rest of his NBA career, whatever might have happened after his Warriors stint, if he had gone a different way instead of the Nets, none of it really mattered at that point. The perception of him was always going to be different. And you can feel those tectonic shifts with certain players. With LeBron is probably the closest parallel, and even at the time, people were drawing that comparison. But you can feel that, and maybe this is just a byproduct of me being in the industry too, but you can feel this is going to really change. Every piece I read about Kevin Durant from now on, every broadcast that he's on is going to talk about him differently. And it's a weird thing to experience in real time. It's a weird thing to have that realization of the landscape and the culture of the game is kind of shifting under our feet because a player as good as him and a player as unimpeachable as him at that point, as far as what he had done with the Thunder, his reputation within that organization and with that city, that someone like him would join an already established and successful outfit in the Warriors in the fashion that he did. People were going to take that a certain way. And it's one of those things where it almost doesn't matter how you feel about it. You're going to have to deal with everyone else's feelings about it. As a basketball society, it invited a certain kind of therapy. What do we think about the soul of the game and the state of the league? What do we think about the idea that a player could do this, even if it took an atypical cap spike to get there? What does this mean about our sport? And whatever happens in free agency 2024, LeBron declines his player option and goes to sign wherever, I don't think there's going to be a soul of basketball conversation. It takes a very unique moment in time, and it takes a player like Kevin Durant making the decision that he did to invite that. And that part of it, I think in a lot of ways we're still kind of dealing with the after effects of. It was rings culture, it was the chase of legacy, it was an individual source of trying to find fulfillment in basketball in a way he hadn't felt before. It's all these things colliding and spiraling together in ways that really fed into what the NBA discourse is today. What's weird about the Kevin Durant legacy conversation is I think we're all in agreement that by skill set, he's one of the most skilled players who's ever lived. He dominates the game in a way that no one his size really ever has before, or even now, to be clear. And yet there's this weird conversation about he's somehow lacking as a superstar. He's somehow lacking as the definitive guy of an organization when one of the most accomplished scorers, one of the most unstoppable one-on-one threats, a pillar of team basketball. He's not just an ISO guy and a proven champion twice over. So what are we talking about? Why would we get bogged down in legacy when a player we can all agree checks all the boxes? He just doesn't check this other kind of ephemeral thing that we have decided is important to us. But as an actual basketball product, as a player who goes on the floor and produces and wins and succeeds, I've never found anything particularly lacking with Kevin Durant. For a lot of people, the whole idea of Kevin Durant going there and winning is a detriment to the culture of basketball, right? To the real hooper mentality of you got to pull your own franchise, you got to stay with the one who brought you, and you got to bring those franchises all the way to the finish line on your own terms as the guy. I understand the merits, and I'm not saying there's not something very sweet to those narratives and to those stories when they do happen. You know, when Dirk Nowitzki gets the Mavs all the way there after all those years, that means something in a way that's different from Kevin Durant's. But those rings feel pretty good. The championship validation, pretty good. Hitting a game clinching and a series clinching 3 over LeBron James, I imagine that feels pretty good. And KD has been pretty honest about the fact that maybe winning a title wasn't quite the validation he imagined it would be, that when he did get on the other side of it, all of his problems weren't resolved. His whole life didn't change. He was still one of the great basketball players who's ever lived. He just had a little bit more jewelry, and that's okay too. But as far as like when we're evaluating players and we're thinking about what is success in the NBA and what is not, I don't know how you could look at what Kevin Durant did with the Warriors and see that as anything but successful. Here at The Ringer, we're big on sliding doors. Kevin Durant's career is sliding doors. What if the Blazers had drafted him in the first place? What if he had never left OKC? What if the Thunder had never traded James Harden? What if he had chosen any team but the Warriors? What if, his Achilles injury hadn't happened? And of course, what if he was able to accomplish a little more with the Nets? And you could take that with, the shoe size and the toe of him stepping on the line on that critical 3. You could do it from the perspective of his and Kyrie and James Harden's injuries and the fact that those three players in that super team never got off the ground. Those 3 guys never really had a chance to actually play together. And so to me, the big toe thing, and especially the kind of atypical circumstances that led to the Bucks title, it feeds into that whole idea with Kevin Durant, which is, and this is why we get into the legacy conversation with him, I think as much as anything. He's such an intoxicating player to talk about because he can do so much. And he's always had such extraordinary potential. He's always had so much ability. And he always has weird things happening around him all the time. Even the series that led to him going to the Warriors in the first place. It took the Thunder blowing a 3-1 lead. It also took Klay Thompson having maybe the hottest shooting performance I have ever seen a player have to get there. If Klay misses one of those threes, and he was taking some basically from the logo by that point in the 2016 Western Conference Finals, maybe everything is different. Maybe Kevin Durant stays with the Thunder. Maybe the Thunder go to the finals and they have a great run. Maybe he retires there someday. But one door slides, everything with Durant changes, the whole perception of him and his game change in that moment. And the same thing happens with him over and over and over in a way that it just doesn't happen with other players. Like other greats have free and easy and smooth careers by comparison in a lot of cases. There are guys who deal with injury. There's guys who deal with upheaval. There's guys who change teams and have these kind of eras to their career that create neat bookends. Almost no one has all of it in the way that Kevin Durant has all of it. And sometimes that really metastasizes in a toe, on the line, in a huge moment. And what can you do with that? Yeah. Jif. I think it's pronounced Jif. You're really dragging me through. You want legacy talk? You want Jif GIF discussion? What are we doing?